I'm wondering if to embrace leadership, it seems like, well, especially back in the 60s and 70s, it was counterintuitive to allow yourself to be a sounding board or to use your team as a sounding board. You bring that up too. Can you share a bit more about how that helps you embrace leadership?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I learned how to be a sounding board from a gentleman named Nick who worked for me. And it was the first time I really realized I had been doing it over the years, but I really realized how important it is. And so back in my first job, I'm going to age myself here, was August 18th, 1978. I was a bus girl at the old Aladdin Hotel here in Las Vegas. And leaders were more of they gave directions. They didn't really care to talk to their employees. They were the boss, and I'm a baby boomer. And so we took the role that the boss is the boss and you do what the boss says because the boss is the boss. The 21st century leaders, they have more empathy. They have a lot better listening skills. They are collaborators. And one of the most important things that we can do as a leader is really just shut up and listen. Listen to what our people have to say. And don't listen to solve problems. Don't listen to fix the situation or the person. Just listen to be there and hear and witness what your employee is going through. And then you may find out that all they needed was just you to listen. They may not, and a lot of times they don't need you to fix something. They just need to be able to say the words out loud, process what they're going through, and find their own best solution. They just need somebody that's willing to give them that space to be able to talk it out. And I've had Nick a number of times would come into my office, and when I learned to just listen to him, he could work through his own problems and find his own solutions without me giving him any advice or any recommendations. But I had to learn to do that. I had to learn to stop trying to fix and solve problems and just let him sit there and process.
Okay. So when the idea of letting the person put it out there, and then you come back with it, but I think an important thing I want to just make sure everybody heard is that you don't necessarily have to come back with a solution. Mm-hmm. And that must really be kind of tough because after all, we are humans, and you talk about that idea of being a human as a leader, but as a human, I don't know if it gets divided by sex or something, but by gender, but we want to say what's going on. We want to put our 2 cents in.
Yeah.
How do you coach against that?
Well, the recommendation I always make is that we should listen 80% of the time and talk 20. Now, any good manager, any good supervisor, any good leader has spent some of their life experience and career fixing problems, solving problems. And what happens is there's a certain point in your career where you stop being the fixer and the solver, and you give people space to do that themselves. And it is one of the hardest things to do, to stop fixing problems, stop solving problems. I know I struggled with it. I was a general manager of hotels for a number of years. And the nature of being in the hospitality industry is solving problems all day long. So it's just about creating a new habit. And that habit is a habit of listening and getting out of your head and processing, what you're going to say next, how you're going to fix it, and just be present with the person. And it's something that it requires a lot of practice. So it's just giving them the recommendations and the tactics and the techniques and this suggestion of 80-20, and then sending people off to practice. It takes a lot of practice to let go of control of solving all the problems.
I twisted a little bit in the wind here because you're from the tourism industry, and like I said, there's one problem after the next problem that you almost feel like you need to set up and solve. But is that 80-20 rule going to apply there too? Not just for your employees, but for your customers who come in, because you're creating a culture there.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was real young in the industry, I worked for Embassy Suites Hotels, and I was there when they rolled out the 100% satisfaction guarantee policy. And there was a sign on the TV in the living room of every suite. And it said, if you're not happy, we offer 100% satisfaction guarantee, full refund. And we rolled out this program where If a guest was not happy, any employee in the hotel could refund their entire night's stay. And what's really interesting about this is what I think that's where I started to learn a really good question is what make it right? What can I do to make it right for you? And so you put the question back on the customer and let the customer decide what is fair. You let the customer inform you of what needs to be done. And I'll tell you, a number of times, all customers want is they want the problem solved and they want to be listened to. I can't tell you as I grew in my career how many times customers would call me and tell me I was the first person that really listened to them. And I worked with Wyndham Hotels. I ran the customer service department. It was my department under my responsibility. And I had 30 employees in that department sitting in an office over at the airport in Dallas taking complaint calls. And when somebody called the corporate office, they always wanted to talk to the chairman, Fred Kleisner,
Yeah.
and his office would have them talk to me, or the switchboard operators would give it to me, and I would answer the phone. Thank you for calling Wyndham Hotels. This is Kathy. How may I help you? They go, what is your name? Kathy Kalesha. How do you spell that?
Yeah.
I'd spell it out. What's your title? And I'm like, oh, here we go. And then they would go, they'd be, they'd just rant in the phone. I just, cursing every word in the book. And I would just, oh, no, no. And I would wait until there was a pause. And I would wait just long enough that I was determining if they were taking a breath or if they were ready for me to say something. And sometimes they would be like, are you there? I'm like, oh, no, I'm here. I was just making sure that you said everything you need to say. And then I would just ask them, what can we do to make it right? What do you feel is fair? And they would say, oftentimes they would say, you know what? You're the first person that's listened to me. I've talked to 5 people. Nobody listened to me. And the solution with both employees, customers, your leaders, your peers is if you can be a better listener, you can be the person that's the go-to person that they trust more than anybody else, because that's all people want. They want